Please do consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. It will be of great help. It's February 3, 2022. It's 12:59 a.m. So I'm going to attempt to read Exodus. We already finished reading Genesis. For the information of everybody, I already read this Bible when I was in first year high school and when I was in third year high school in the seminary. So let's start. Exodus is the escape from Egypt. It is God's great exploit in the Old Testament, setting out from a place of slavery to go towards the promised land. God frees his people with great power, a strong hand, and an outstretched arm, which means striking with mighty blows and opening for them a way through the sea. Exodus is the heart of the Old Testament and makes it fully relevant in presenting to us a God who frees humankind. This book has given the Jewish religion and later Christian faith a first orientation, making them different from all other religions. God does not primarily come in order to be respected or to indicate spiritual paths, but rather to choose a people who will allow him to act at the heart of human history. God reveals himself to Moses because he wants to create a nation for himself, and it will be Israel. The Gospels and Christians did recognize in Jesus another Moses who launches a new venture, and in this book they will try to discover symbols of what they are living in the church. Crossing the Red Sea is baptism. The rock from which the spring of water gushes forth is Christ. The covenant on Sinai anticipates the new covenant. In any case, you must not forget how the first experience and the significant event all began. The Exodus is first and foremost the liberation of slaves, and is the choosing by God of the Israelites, a genuine liberation which concerns the whole human reality, individual and social. God frees those he wants for himself, and Christian liberty will be far removed from what Western culture understands by that word. Exodus and history. The narrations of Exodus abound in beautiful stories but are quite different from what we would have observed had we been there at the time. Great frescoes have been painted, but you would like to know what history would say of them. All is situated around 1240 BC, a little more than 5 centuries after Abraham. In the 15th century before Christ, the Egyptians had been conquered by invaders from Canaan who allowed entry into their country to numerous nomads from the desert. See History of Joseph. After 2 centuries, the Egyptians managed to restore their own kings, and from that point on, the nomads were treated with far less consideration. Many fled to avoid taxes or enforced labor. Some were banished, others escaped under the darkness of night. It is in this context that Exodus is situated. A nomadic group pursued by an Egyptian army detachment is saved by God through an extraordinary intervention. The Israelites saw the Egyptians lying dead on the seashore. Moses, a prophet, led the fugitives and interpreted for them this event. Yahweh, the only God, had chosen them to be his people. Moses and his followers were to remain a long time in the oasis of Sinai, and it was there that Moses would give them Yahweh's law. History then is found in Exodus, but Exodus relates much more, and it is there that history in its modern meaning may not agree with it. For this book is not the work of one author, but rather the result of a long evolution, and has been marked by the different ways of recording history in ancient times. We have mentioned one of these ways in the commentary chapter 35 of Genesis. History listened to in groups that passed on orally the past story of their clan. In this way, one family has been made up by Moses, his father-in-law, Jethro or Reuel, Aaron, brother of Moses, and Miriam, sister of Aaron and prophetess. There is the memory of links established between Moses and leaders of prophets of other clans. In the same way, Mount Sinai has been identified in this account with the Mount Horeb and the Mount of God. These were separate holy places, certain traditions of which have been confused. More about this will be discussed later. Very different is the way history is recorded by the Jewish priests who have given this book its definitive form at the time of the Babylonian exile. They developed old memories in order to assert that not what had been, but the way the people of Israel should see its past and understand itself. In doing this, they showed their contemporaries a way of being the people of God and bearers of history. From there comes the vision of an immense nation, already formed, organized, which has its sanctuary in the desert, its priests and its foundries that will produce the golden calf. This formidable nation walks as one people, nourished by manna for 40 years. It receives its laws, which in fact will only be observed 5 or 6 centuries later. This entire nation leaves Egypt armed to conquer the promised land. The living God of the Exodus. So here we are, facing a double history, one of science and one which has formed the conscience of Israel and of Christians. The first shows us how God in fact became part of the greater history. It tells us that his action has been very discreet, and we discover his very patient pedagogy. The second helps us realize who we are and what we can fully become in Christ. However, we must not totally separate the two, as if all the narration of Exodus was no more than fiction. Let us read a few pages. Never would they have been written, and never would they have been put way on the conscience of a nation if they were not a true witness of those who were with Moses and whose experiences were truly exceptional. Otherwise, never would there have been either the prophets or the gospel, witness of those priests or prophets who later would write them, for they too had an experience of the living God, the Savior of Israel, and because of this, they have passed on to us the fire that was lit on Sinai. Before I continue reading, this is the first time I used the back camera of my Oppo Reno 5. So let's continue. The chapter 1, the Hebrews increase in Egypt. Here are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob, each with his family: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah; Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin; Dan and Naphtali; Gad and Asher. These descendants of Jacob numbered 70 in all. Apart from these, Joseph was already in Egypt. Then Joseph died, as did all his brothers and all that generation. The sons of Israel were fruitful and kept increasing to such an extent that they multiply and grow in strength, and that the land teemed with them. The Hebrews reduced to slavery. Then the new king, who had not known Joseph, came to power and said to his people, "The Israelites are more numerous and stronger than we are. Let us deal warily with them, lest they increase still more, and in case of war, side with our enemy, fight against us, and escape from the land." So they set taskmasters over them to oppress them with forced labor. In that way, they built the storage towns of Pithom and Ramesses. But the more they oppressed the Hebrews, the more they increased and spread, until the Egyptians dreaded the Israelites and became ruthless in making them work. They made life bitter for them in hard labor with bricks and mortar, and with all kinds of work in the fields. In all their work, the Egyptians treated them harshly. Then the king of Egypt gave orders to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was called Shipra and the other Puah, that when they attended Hebrew women who were on the birth stool and saw that it was a boy, they were to kill it. But if it was a girl, they were to let it live. But the midwives feared God and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded, but let the children live. The king called the midwives and said, Why have you acted like that and let the children live? Midwives reply, because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women. They are vigorous and give birth even before a midwife arrives. God blessed the midwives, and the people increased and became even numerous because the midwives revered God. He made them mothers and of families. Pharaoh then gave this order to all the people: every infant boy born to the Hebrews must be thrown into the Nile, but every girl may live. Chapter 2. Moses saved from the river. Now a man belonging to the clan of Levi married a woman of his own tribe. She gave birth to a boy, and seeing that he was a beautiful child, she kept him hidden for 3 months, as she could not conceal him any longer. She made a basket out of papyrus leaves and coated it with tar and pitch. She then laid the child in the basket and placed it among the reeds near the bank of the Nile, but the sister of the child kept a distance to see what would happen to him. Now the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe in the Nile. Her attendants meanwhile walked along the bank. When she saw the basket among the reeds, she sent her maid servant to fetch it. She opened the basket and saw the child, a boy, and he was crying. She felt sorry for him, for she thought, "This is one of the Hebrew children." Then the sister of the child said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?" Pharaoh's daughter agreed, and the girl went to call the mother of the child. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take the child and nurse him for me, and I will pay you." So the woman took the child and nursed him, and when the child had grown, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, who adopted him as her son, and she named him Moses to recall that she had drawn him out of the water. Moses discovers his people. After a fairly long time, Moses, by now a grown man, wanted to meet his fellow Hebrews. He noticed how heavily they were burdened, and he saw an Egyptian striking a Hebrew, one of his own people. He looked around, and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian. He killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. When he went out the next day, he saw two Hebrews quarreling. Moses said to the man in the wrong, "Why are you striking a fellow countryman?" But he answered, "Who has set you prince and judge over us? Do you intend to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Moses was afraid and thought, "What I did must be known." When Pharaoh heard about it, he tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in the land of Midian. There he sat down by a well. Moses in Midian. A priest of Midian had 7 daughters. They came to draw water and fill the troughs to water their father's sheep. Some shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses went to their help and watered the sheep. When the girls returned to their father Reuel, he asked them, "Why have you come back too early today?" They said, "An Egyptian protected us from the shepherds, and even drew water for us and watered the sheep." The man said, "Where is he? Why did you leave him there? Call him and offer him a meal." Moses agreed to stay with the man, and he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah in marriage. She had a child, and Moses named him Gershom, to recall what he had been a guest in a strange land. God remembers Israel. It happened during that long period of time that the king of Egypt died. The sons of Israel groaned under their slavery. They cried to God for help, and from their bondage, their cry ascended to God. God heard their sigh and remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God looked upon the Israelites and revealed himself to them. A burning bush. Moses pastured the sheep of Jethro, his father-in-law, priest of Midian. One day he led the flock to the far side of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. The angel of Yahweh appeared to him by means of a flame of fire in the middle of a bush. Moses saw that although the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. Moses thought, "I will go and see this amazing sight. Why is the bush not burning up?" Yahweh saw that Moses was drawing near to look, and God called to him from the middle of the bush, "Moses, Moses." He replied, "Here I am." Yahweh said to him, "Do not come near. Take off your sandals, because the place where you are standing is holy ground." And God continued, "I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Moses hid his face lest his eyes look on God. Yahweh said, I have seen the humiliation of my people in Egypt, and I hear their cry when they are cruelly treated by their taskmasters. I know their suffering. I have come down to free them from the power of the Egyptians and to bring them up from that land to a beautiful, spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to the territory of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. The cry of the sons of Israel has reached me, and I have seen how the Egyptians oppressed them. Go now, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the sons of Israel, out of Egypt. Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the people of Israel out of Egypt? God replied, I will be with you, and this will be the sign that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Moses answered God, if I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God of our fathers has sent me to you, they will ask me, what is his name? What shall I answer them? God said to Moses, I am who am. This is what you will say to the sons of Israel, I am sent me to you. Sent me to you. God then said to Moses, you will say to the Israelites, Yahweh, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob has sent me. That will be my name forever, and by this name they shall call upon me for all generations to come. Moses is given his mission. Go, call together the elders of Israel and say to them, Yahweh, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob appeared to me and said, I have seen and taken account of how the Egyptians have treated you, and I mean to bring you out of all this oppression in Egypt and take you to the land of the Canaanites, a land flowing with milk and honey. The elders of Israel will listen to you, and with them you shall go to the place of the king of Egypt and say to him, the God of the Hebrews, Yahweh, has met with us. Now let us go a 3 days journey into the wilderness to sacrifice to Yahweh our God. I well know that the king of the Egyptians will not allow you to go unless he is forced to do so. I will therefore stretch out my hand and strike Egypt in extraordinary ways, after which he will let you go, and I will make the Egyptians treat my people well. When you leave, you will not go empty-handed. Each woman will ask her neighbor, had any Egyptian woman stay in her house to lend her ornaments of silver and gold and clothing. With these you will clothe your sons and daughters, and in this way you will plunder the Egyptians. Moses granted miraculous powers. Moses replied to Yahweh. Chapter 4, Moses granted miraculous powers. Moses replied to Yahweh, what if they will not believe me or listen to me? Maybe they will say, that's not true. Yahweh did not appear to you. Yahweh then asked him, what is that in your right hand? A staff. He replied, and God said, throw it to the ground. He threw it, and it became a serpent. And Moses drew back from it. Yahweh said, take it by the tail. Moses took it, and it was again a staff in his hand. Then Yahweh said, with such signs they may believe that Yahweh, the God of your fathers, appeared to you. Again Yahweh said to him, put your hand on your chest. He put his hand on his chest, and when he took it away, his hand was covered with leprosy, white as snow. And God said, put your hand back on your chest. So he put it back, and when they saw it away again, his hand was healthy like the rest of his body. Yahweh added, if they don't believe you and are not convinced by the first sign, they will believe you when they see the second. But if these 2 signs are not enough to make them believe you, take some water from the Nile and pour it on the ground, and the water from the Nile will turn into blood. Aaron, interpreter of Moses. Moses said to Yahweh, but my Lord, never have I been a fluent speaker, either before or after you have spoken to me. I cannot find words to express what I want to say. I cannot find words to express what I want to say. So in I'm really like Moses also. In my That's my struggle in my everyday life here. Uh, Sometimes I'm not able to express what I really wanted to say. So sometimes my the way I converse with other people is very vague and foggy. So it's one of my problems. And one of the reasons why I'm reading this Bible so that it will make me a fluent speaker. Hopefully, hopefully, hopefully. So let's continue. I cannot find words to express what I want to say. Yahweh said to him, who gave man a mouth? Who make his dumb or deaf, with sight or blind? Is it not I, Yahweh? Go now, I will be on your lips and will inspire what you say. But Moses insisted, my Lord, I pray you, why not send someone else? At this, Yahweh became angry with Moses and said, what of your brother Aaron the Levite? I know that he speaks well. Look, he is coming to meet you, and he will be glad when he sees you. You will speak to him and tell him what I have told you to say. And when you tell him, or when he speaks, I will be with you and teach you what you have to say. Aaron will speak for you as a prophet speaks for his God. And with this staff in your hand, you will work miraculous signs. Moses returns to Egypt. Then Moses went back to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said to him, I am going back to my brothers in Egypt to see if they are still alive. Jethro said to Moses, go in peace. Yahweh said to Moses in the land of Midian, go back to Egypt, for all those who wanted to kill you are dead. Moses took him with his wife and his sons. He put them on a donkey and set off for Egypt, holding in his hand the staff of God. Yahweh said to Moses, you are returning to Egypt, and you will perform all the miraculous signs that I have empowered you to do in the presence of Pharaoh. I will, however, make him stubborn, so that he will not let the people go. You shall then say to Pharaoh, this is Yahweh's message. Israel is my firstborn son, and I said to you, let my son go, that he may worship me. But you have refused to let him go, and because of this I will take the life of your firstborn son. At a lodging place on the way, the angel of Yahweh approached Moses and tried to kill him. But Zipporah took a flint stone and cut her son's foreskin, and with it she touched the feet of Moses, saying, you are now my husband by blood. And the angel left him. Zipporah said husband by blood because of the circumcision. Moses meets Aaron. Yahweh said to Aaron, go into the desert and meet your brother Moses. So Aaron went and met him on the mountain of God and kissed him. Moses related to Aaron all that Yahweh had said to him and all the signs he had commanded him to perform. Moses and Aaron assembled all the elders of the Israelites, and Aaron told them everything that Yahweh had said to Moses. He also performed all the signs before the people, and they believed him. When they heard that Yahweh had visited the people of Israel and had seen their suffering, they bowed to the ground and worshipped him. Moses speaks, chapter 5, Moses speaks with Pharaoh. After this, Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said, this is what Yahweh, the God of Israel, says, let my people go, that they may hold a feast for me in the desert. Pharaoh replied, who is Yahweh, that I should listen to his voice and let Israel go? I do not know Yahweh, and I will not let Israel go. They then said, the God of the Hebrews has met with us. Allow us to make a 3 days journey to the desert. There we shall offer sacrifices to Yahweh our God, lest he punish us with the plague of the sword. The king of Egypt said to them, Moses and Aaron, why do you take people away from their work? Get back to your tasks. The people are now numerous, and you are asking them to interrupt their work. That same day Pharaoh gave the following order to the taskmasters of the people and to the Israelite foremen. You will no longer supply the people with straw for making bricks. Let them go and find it themselves. But you will exact from them the same number of bricks as before, not one less. They are lazy, and that is why they are crying out to go and sacrifice to their God. make the work harder for the people, and pay no attention to their lies. First difficulties. The slave drivers and their Israelite foremen went out and said to the people, Pharaoh will not give you any more straw. Go and get it yourselves wherever you can find it. But the amount of work done must be the same as before. People scattered throughout Egypt to gather stubble to use for straw. The taskmasters kept pressing them, saying, Complete the work required of you each day, as you did when you had straw. Taskmasters beat the Israelite foremen they had placed over the people, saying, Why haven't your people completed the same amount of work as before? The Israelite foremen complained to Pharaoh, saying, Why do you treat us like this? We are given no straw, and yet we are told to make bricks. We are being beaten, but the fault is with your own people. Pharaoh replied, Lazy, you are lazy, and that is why you asked to go and sacrifice to Yahweh. Go back to work, you will not be given straw, but you will produce the same numbers of bricks. The Israelite foremen felt they were in great trouble. They met Moses and Aaron, who were waiting for them, and said to them, May Yahweh look upon you and judge you, because you have made us hateful to Pharaoh and his ministers, and placed in his hand a sword to kill us. Moses then turned to Yahweh and said, O Lord, why have you treated your people so badly? Why did you send me? From the time I spoke to Pharaoh in your name, he has brought trouble on his people, and you have done nothing to rescue them. One. For centuries, a great part of humanity has lived under oppression. Historians speak little of humanity's life of suffering. Rebelliousness was rare since the great majority were resigned and even came to believe that slavery was a normal situation. But God willed to intervene at least once in a manifest form to liberate the Hebrew people. This was the first step in the history of the people of God. The Bible traces in bold strokes the subhuman conditions of the Hebrews in Egypt. The Egyptians' lords were afraid of a people who, according to them, grew irresponsibly fast. They imposed hard work on the Israelites who had to build and defend a society which should not promote their welfare or recognize their rights. Exploitation and oppression went hand in hand with inhuman labor and political repression enforced by the Egyptian overseers. Finally, an alien authority imposed drastic population control on the Israelites. Situations of oppression can be found in Maccabees, Isaiah, Amos, Ezekiel, Micah, Job, Lamentations, Hor, Shipra, and Puah. These are names of Egyptian women who, because of their compassion for the oppressed people, made mockery of the king's order and refused to execute what their conscience condemned. 2. The liberation of the people. The liberation of the Hebrew people begins with a simple solitary act, that of a mother risking her life to save her son. Her action is the manifestation of a mother's love. It is the rebellion of a conscience that refuses to obey an inhuman law. It is the act of faith of a mother who anticipates the wonderful future that God opens to a newly born infant, knowing also that children are the future of her people. Isn't this the same way in which mothers today refuse abortion in the name of their conscience enlightened by faith? Historians explain that the details of this story were inspired by the legend of King Zargon, who was saved from drowning even he was a boy. Most probably nothing was known about Moses' childhood. The story of the basket found among the reeds was a pleasant way of expressing God's providence. Moses would escape from the common destiny of Hebrew children and land in the confined world of those who benefit from culture. The one who was to free the slaves should experience liberty. The slaves did not even know that what the word freedom meant. Moses lived a prince's life. Nevertheless, he went to meet these people who lived in poor conditions. He noticed how heavily they were burdened. He didn't respond like many culturally privileged who, rather than acting in solidarity with their people, act contrary to their interests. Moses did not deliberately close his eyes like those who deny their humble beginnings or reject solidarity with their companions in order to be admitted to higher circles. Immediately, Moses sides with his people. On the following day, he discovers another aspect of evil. They are not innocent victims. The oppression they suffer has something to do with the violence, the evil, and the responsibility which exists among them. They are not respected by the Egyptians, but neither are they concerned about meriting their respect. This time Moses does not know what to do and prefers to flee. Moses has taken the first step on the way that will lead to the liberation of these people. Likewise, those who are able to share the lot of the privileged but prefer to put themselves at the service of the lowly become, without knowing it, followers of Christ, as Hebrews chapter 11 verse 24 to 26 says, by faith Moses refused to be called son of Pharaoh's daughter. He preferred to share ill treatment with the people of God rather than enjoy the passing pleasure of sin. He considered the humiliation of Christ a greater wealth than the wealth of Egypt. Thus, we see that the Bible values efforts made to promote human dignity and the efforts of youth workers and all those struggling for development and for a more active participation in the building of the future. The liberation God will bring about is at the same time a liberation from structures of oppression and the awakening of each person regarding his or her own sin. As a shepherd in the desert, Moses learns the raw life, poor and free, like that of Abraham. He lives among the Midianites, who are more or less descendants of the father of the believers. Genesis chapter 25, paragraph verse 2. Thus Moses receives from his father-in-law Reuel, also called Jethro, the traditions of Abraham and his faith to the one and only God. They cried to God for help, and from their bondage their cry ascended to God. At times people do not even have the spirit to hope in God, but though they may have forgotten the promises, God does not forget them. There is such a thing as God's time and also God's delay. Though we can hasten the hour of God, time and the moment belong to Him. 3. God waits several years and then calls Moses when he is already mature. He calls him at a time when Moses has chosen the paths of a father of a family and shepherd of sheep. He does this in the desert, where Moses, who has apparently isolated himself from the misfortunes of his people and day after day wastes the opportunity to help them. Thus many times God waits for a person in this or in this or that desert of his or her life. During those times, apparently or so empty, God prepares his servants while their heart and generosity remain intact. The angel of Yahweh appeared to him by means of a flame of fire. The angel of Yahweh, we know this is one way of saying Yahweh, God Himself. Visions and angels, Genesis chapter 6, verse 1, presents Himself as a fire that catches the eye, but burns whoever approaches it. For centuries, this mountain had been a sacred place, and Moses does what anyone would do when entering a holy place: take off one's sandals so as not to bring before God the dust of ordinary existence. I am the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. The God Moses' ancestors called by different names is only one, and his choice now falls on Moses. I will be with you each time God calls people to a mission. He begins by reassuring them, for they immediately understand that such mission will fully take possession of them. I am sending you to Pharaoh. This will be the first step of Moses' mission. After delivering Israel from Egypt, he will almost by force impose their destiny upon them, which is to be the chosen people of God. God speaks of bringing Israel to the land flowing with milk and honey, the land promised to Abraham. He does not fix the time nor give details, but foretells an event that will prove the authenticity of the mission. Someday, Israel, poor but free, will arrive with Moses at the mount to meet God and receive his life-giving words, the divine name. Among other people have their own ideas about God and who search in darkness for the meaning of their destiny. Israel was to be a people who knew God according to the truth and who, because of this, would know wherein lies true human greatness. The revelation of the one and only God is linked to our freeing mission. And there we have the relevant character of biblical revelation. Some years earlier, the Pharaoh Akhenaton wished in his own way to identify the only God. His intuition got bogged down in a problem of worship and had no impact on history. The God of Moses is instead the one holy and just God who desires to be served by free persons. I am who I am. There are two ways of translating these words. The first is what we give here. God is the one who alone exists without any limitation. This meaning agrees with the end of verse 14, and at the same time it gives meaning to Yahweh, but it could also be understood as I am who I am. In this case, God does not really refuse to make known his identity to Moses since he is going to give him his name, but he lets it be understood that no one is able to share the secret of his person. By this name they shall call upon me. It is evident that every name depends on the particular language in which it has its own meaning. God reveals to the Hebrews a name Yahweh, which in their language is interpreted as He is. If He had spoken to another people, God would have given another name which would have had meaning for them. Yahweh means at the same time He is and He causes to exist. He may understand that God is and causes to exist that which He knows. This name is directly related to the saying by God in verse 14, I am who am and I am. I am. This is the God who lives and sees. Genesis chapter 16 verse 13. And He wants to manifest something of His own mystery. He lets blazing fire. Ezekiel chapter 1 verse 14. Wind, storm, and thunder, and the waves of the sea go before Him. All these are nothing more than images that scream like a cloud. God's mystery, which is infinitely more profound. This mystery transcends and reaches beyond not only human insight, but the mind of any human or angelic creature. We all receive existence from God, but God exists in Himself and depends on one and nothing whatsoever. God is one, and none of those who receive existence from Him can add anything to God. Thus, then, God is and He causes to exist the one who knows Him. This revelation is critical for understanding the whole Bible and should be remembered when believers simply say, God is love, God is goodness, and forget that this alone would be false if it were not first affirmed that God is who He is. If God were only the Almighty, we would think of prostrating ourselves before Him, set out to make war against idols, and give all importance to laws on prayer, fasting, and the good works He demands. If He were only goodness, we would not understand why He lets us suffer. But He said, I am who I am. God is a wholly active and perfectly free person, and He calls us to be persons who exist in truth. Hence, God creates a world in which we can act responsibly. God does not impose good. He prefers that through our experience and our errors, we come to discover where the true good is. To worship God does not mean, as some believe, to lie prostrate before Him, but rather to approach Him face to face. God wants to be served by persons who in turn free others. In presenting Himself this way, the one true God has said the most essential thing. At this early stage of history, He could not speak more precisely and reveal the mystery of the divine persons in the same God. This would be the task of Jesus. Hence, for centuries, the Israelites retained the figure of a sovereign God who spoke more the language of obedience, Yahweh or Jehovah, in the last centuries. Before Jesus' coming, the Israelites, out of respect, would not pronounce the name of Yahweh. Hence, Yahweh was changed to Yehovah in the Bible, term which had no meaning nor was pronounced, but on seeing it, the reader knew that he should not say Yahweh but Idona, or Lord. It had been put into the secret consonants YHWH of Yahweh, the three vowels EOA of Idona. Yahweh has met with us, invoking religious motives to offer sacrifices could not hide the fact that the only objective of the Hebrew slaves was to liberate themselves from the oppression that they suffered. All this happened at a time when there was no social or political problem that was not expressed in religious terms. But today, some ask, does the Bible speak to us in the sense of human and political liberation, or does it rather propose a spiritual liberation? In truth, this opposition is artificial. Experience teaches us that in order to save one's neighbor, neither material help nor political change nor prayer is sufficient. What is important is that persons rise to new life. To do this, they themselves must confront and solve the real problems of their common life. Material, educational, or political, starting with a more lucid vision of reality as God sees it, and with a more authentic love. This is spiritual. I mean to bring you out of all this oppression. God, who exists, is concerned about those who still do not exist in truth. We say that God saves human persons, and so we suppose that these are real persons and not undeveloped persons. Without liberty or responsibility, salvation is not the washing of souls, but the restoration of the human person in all dimensions, individual, family, and social. When speaking of liberation, the Bible always refers to a total liberation of the human person. We can study Exodus as a life of Moses and see that he was saved, or that he grew as a person and as a believer to the extent that he was taking charge of his material and spiritual tasks as leader, liberator of his people. They will not believe me. It is always difficult for the marginalized to unite and put their confidence in the one who can uplift them, but it will cost Israel even more to follow a path to liberation that is slow and so opposed to human wisdom. Moses usually does not care what people think, but acts with the authority of God. This is why he receives power to perform miracles, which prove his authority. All this story is adapted to the world in which Moses lived. We find here the type of portents that were attributed to Egyptian sorcerers. Aaron will speak for you. Perhaps Moses wants to flee from the call of God. Perhaps he feels inferior because he does not have the human qualities that seem essential in the leader. God, of course, will provide the necessary means to understand the role of Aaron in these events. We must remember that the Jewish priests were called sons of Aaron. They were considered as his descendants. That is why Aaron, who was probably Moses' brother in a vague way, just as Miriam, sister of Aaron, became in time his blood brother, we find him sharing the authority of Moses and interpreting his words in reality. All that points out to the priests of Israel and establish their authority. Moses appears to be gravely sick. His wife thinks it is because he has not been circumcised. Therefore, according to the thinking of that time, the circumcises his son instead of him. She circumcises his son instead of him. It may be noted that chapter 4, verse 19 has been taken textually in Matthew chapter 2, verse 20. The evangelist extends to show that Jesus is the new Moses. 5. The word of God is not as easily heard in the offices of the capital as in the desert. Pharaoh's responses and decisions seem to be model which many contemporary directors and administrators imitate. Moses and Aaron received a negative response and later faced the mistrust of their companions. Throughout history, we find the same opposition from those who did not want to take any initiative to liberate themselves and did not trust in its success. They paid no attention to the leaders working for their good. Martin Luther King, shortly before his death, said with sadness that he was shocked by the indifference of the blacks. He felt alone in struggling for the cause of his people. God did not lack the means to advance his liberating work, provided Moses would have faith and would persevere. Notice the embarrassment of those trusted Israelites who supervised people on behalf of the Egyptian authorities. Let's have a break. It's time check, 1:43 a.m. We go now to chapter 6. Yahweh said to Moses, "Now you will see that I will overcome him and oblige him to let you go, even force him to drive you out of his land." Another narrative of the call of Moses. God spoke to Moses, saying, "I am Yahweh. I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as God Almighty, but I did not make myself known to them by the name of Yahweh. I established my covenant with them, promising to give them the land of Canaan, which they lived as strangers. And now I remember my covenant as I hear the groaning of the Israelites enslaved by the Egyptians. Therefore say this to them, I am Yahweh. I will take you away from the burden of Egypt and free you from its bondage. I will redeem you with the blows of my powerful hand. I will take you for my people, and you will know that I am Yahweh your God, who delivered you from the slavery of the Egyptians. I will bring you to the land I swore I would give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I will give it to you as your own possession. I am Yahweh." This is how Moses spoke to the people of Israel, but they did not listen, so discouraged were they by their cruel slavery. Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, "Go and speak to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and tell him to let the people of Israel leave the country." But Moses said, "If the Israelites pay no attention to me, how then will Pharaoh listen to me, a man who has difficulty in expressing himself?" But Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron and ordered them, and Pharaoh as well, to bring the people of Israel out of Egypt. The forefathers of Moses and Aaron, these were the heads of the tribes, sons of Reuben, Israel's firstborn: Hanok, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. These are the families of Reuben. Sons of Simeon: Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, and Shaul, son of a Canaanite woman. These are the families of Simeon. These are the sons of Levi, with their descendants: Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. Levi lived 137 years. Sons of Gershon: Libni and Shimei, and their descendants. Sons of Kohath: Amram, Izhar, Hebron, and Uzziel. Kohath lived for 133 years. Sons of Merari: Mahli and Mushi. These are the descendants of Levi, with their families. Amram married Jochebed, his aunt, who gave him two sons, Aaron and Moses. Amram lived 137 years. Wow. The sons of Izhar were Korah, Nepheg, and Zichri. The sons of Uzziel: Mishael, Elzaphan, and Sithri. Aaron married Elisheba, daughter of Aminadab and sister of Nashon, and she bore him Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. The sons of Korah: Asir, Elkanah, and Abiasap. These are the families of the Korahites. Eleazar, son of Aaron, married one of Putiel's daughters, and Phinehas was their son. These are the heads of the families of the Levites according to their clans. It was to Aaron and Moses that Yahweh said, "Bring the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt in divisions." It was they who spoke with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, about bringing the Israelites out of Egypt. Yes, it was Moses and Aaron. When Yahweh spoke to Moses in the land of Egypt, he said, I am Yahweh. Say to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, all that I tell you. But Moses replied, I am a poor speaker, and why would Pharaoh listen to me? Chapter 7 Announcement of the Plagues. Yahweh said to Moses, See, I have made you like a god in Pharaoh's eyes, and Aaron, your brother, will be your prophet. You will tell Aaron all that I command you, and he will tell Pharaoh to let the people of Israel leave the country. But I will make him stubborn, and although I multiply my signs and miracles, he will not listen to you. Then I will use my power and lead my armies, my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt by means of great punishments. Then will the Egyptians know that I am Yahweh when they see with what power I bring the people of Israel out of their country. Moses and Aaron did exactly what Yahweh had commanded. Moses had 80 and Aaron 83. Moses was 80 and Aaron 83 when they spoke to Pharaoh. Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, When Pharaoh speaks to you and tells you to perform a miracle to prove the truth of what you say, you will say to Aaron, Take your staff and throw it down before Pharaoh, and it will become a snake. Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and did what Yahweh had commanded. Aaron threw his staff before Pharaoh and his ministers, and it became a snake. Pharaoh then summoned wise men and magicians, and they too, the magicians of Egypt, did the same by means of their secret arts. Each one threw his staff down, and the staff became serpents, but Aaron's staff swallowed the staffs of their magicians. However, Pharaoh was obstinate, and he did not listen to them as Yahweh had said. The plagues of Egypt. Yahweh said to Moses, Pharaoh is stubborn. He has refused to let the people live. So will go to Pharaoh in the morning. When he goes to the water, wait for him on the bank of the river, and hold in your hand the staff that turned into a serpent. You will say to him, Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, sent me to say to you, Let my people go to worship me in the desert. But so far you have not listened. By this you shall learn that I am Yahweh. Look, I will strike the water of the Nile with the staff I have in my hand, and it will turn into blood. The fish in the river will die, and the Nile will become foul, and the Egyptians will no longer be able to drink its water. Yahweh said to Moses, Say to Aaron, Take your staff and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, rivers, canals, ponds, and pools of water, and they will turn into blood. They will be blood throughout Egypt, even in vessels of wood and stone. Moses and Aaron did as Yahweh had commanded. Aaron raised his staff and struck the waters of the Nile in the presence of Pharaoh and his ministers, and all the water in the Nile turned to blood. The fish in the river died, and the Nile was contaminated, so that the Egyptians could no longer drink the water of the Nile. There was blood all over the country of Egypt. The magicians, however, could do the same with their secret crafts, and Pharaoh remained unmoved, and as Yahweh had foretold, he would not listen to Moses and Aaron. Pharaoh returned to his house as if nothing of importance had happened, and yet all the Egyptians were digging near the Nile for water to drink, because they could not drink from the river. The second plague, the frogs. 7 days passed after Yahweh had struck the Nile. Yahweh said to Moses, Go to Pharaoh and tell him that Yahweh says, Let my people go to worship me. If you refuse to let them leave, I will punish the country with a plague of frogs. Then I will teem with frogs. They will invade your house, your bedroom, and your bed, your servants,